Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Kris. Sorry. Still got him. This is Napoleonic Wars, 1805-1809, March of the Eagles. This is the final part of this section. I will cover 1809 to 1811. If you haven't been watching the other ones, this is part 6. I'm going to cover the 1809, 1811, and 11 to 15 of the Napoleonic Wars. I'm also going to cover the Russian Revolution. Probably should have covered that one before I covered this, but we're doing it. So like and subscribe. This is Epic History TV. If you want to watch it without me on the screen, I get it. I prefer to watch it without me as well, because I don't like me. So link is in the description. You should like and subscribe. Otherwise things are gonna happen to you. I don't know. What do you want? I got rum and cokes in me. All right, somebody dropped off a nice piece, delicious piece of yellow cake with some frosting. The frosting was put on when it was warm, so it melted in. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Okay. Are we centered? Are we ready? Is everyone ready for this? Let's watch this video, folks. Let's see if Napoleon can pull off the Battle of Aspern. I'm sure I just butchered that name. Day 2.
Overnight, Second Corps and the Imperial Guard crossed the Danube to reinforce Napoleon's army, which now numbered 71,000 and 150 guns. But then the bridge broke again, leaving Davout's Third Corps still waiting to cross. Nevertheless, Napoleon decided to attack, using Second Corps to break the Austrian centre. But first, Aspern would have to be retaken. Heavy fighting broke out in the village before dawn. By 7 AM, it was back in French hands. At Essling, fresh Austrian attacks were fought off by General Lasalle's cavalry and units of the Young Guard. With both flanks secure, Napoleon launched his main attack in the centre with Lannes' Second Corps. Austrian guns poured fire into the advancing French ranks. General Saint-Hilaire, leading the attack, a hero of Austerlitz and Jena, had his foot blown off, a wound that proved fatal. Archduke Charles sent his Grenadier Reserve forward to strengthen the line. The French infantry, under torrential fire, began to fall back. At this critical moment, the French bridge over the Danube was broken again, halting the vital flow of reinforcements and ammunition to Napoleon's army. By 2 PM, the French had been driven out of Aspern once more. Heavy fighting continued in Essling, which was briefly captured by the Austrians, then retaken by the Young Guard. Napoleon knew his army could do no more. At 4 PM, he ordered his exhausted cavalry to make a last charge to keep the enemy at bay, then gave the order to retreat. Archduke Charles, whose own army had suffered huge losses and was low on ammunition, was content to watch the French withdraw to the island of Lobau. In the final moments of the battle, Marshal Lannes, one of Napoleon's finest commanders and closest friends, was hit by a cannonball that smashed both his legs. He died of his wounds a week later. It was a deep blow to the Emperor. The two-day Battle of Aspern-Essling was Napoleon's first major defeat, caused by his overconfidence and hasty planning. both sides suffered heavy losses, and Napoleon avoided a much greater disaster only because of the exhaustion of the Austrian army. The French Emperor had learned new respect for the Austrians. Under Archduke Charles, they had fought bravely, with greater confidence, organisation and leadership. Within days of his defeat, Napoleon had summoned reinforcements to join him on the Danube, and begun planning his revenge.
Ramen that's healthy, wholesome, and jam-packed with life-sustaining protein. No, it's not magic. It's the special cooking technique we use that eliminates the need for deep frying, preserving...
I haven't had ramen noodles in forever.
In May 1809, the Austrians had defeated Napoleon's army in the bloody Battle of Aspern. His enemies took heart. After years of French military dominance, it seemed the tide was turning at last. 3 weeks later, Pope Pius VII excommunicated Napoleon for annexing papal land. Another propaganda coup for his enemies. But in the wake of its victory, Austria hesitated, not sure whether to seek peace or continue the war, while Napoleon responded with a hurricane of activity. He summoned reinforcements to join him near Vienna, the Army of Italy under his stepson Eugène de Beauharnais, and 11th Corps under Marshal Marmont, who'd together driven Archduke John's Austrian army out of North Italy, as well as Marshal Bernadotte's Saxon 9th Corps. Napoleon's army grew from 90,000 to a massive 164,000 men and 544 guns,
wow,
to take on Charles's army of 128,000 and 414 guns. 6 weeks after his first attempt had ended in defeat, Napoleon ordered his army to cross the river once more. This time his engineers had built solid bridges across the Danube to ensure there was no repeat of the disasters of Aspern. For the French army, Napoleon declared, the Danube no longer exists. The stage was set for the largest battle yet seen in European history.
Why couldn't they... Oh, largest battle in European history. Why couldn't they still... not the French. Why couldn't Austria... I've been drinking, I apologize. Why couldn't they float barges down again? Because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, if you hit it with something... I mean, it looks like it's reinforced well, but why couldn't you still hit it with something and still fracture it? Well, fracture it, probably wouldn't... No, I mean, you could still take out a section. Why would you allow them to build it? Well, they don't know they're there, Kris. Duh. I apologize. I'm asking a bunch of questions, and it's not like you were there. You can't really... Well, what we did was... You know, I'm sorry. That's
On
good.
the evening of the 4th of July, in heavy rain, the French began crossing from the island of Lobau, not towards the devastated villages of Aspern and Essling, but east towards Groß-Enzersdorf, which was soon ablaze from French shells. Archduke Charles had left only a small advance guard to delay the French. By dawn, General Massena's 4th Corps and Oudinot's 2nd Corps were driving those troops back, winning space for the French army to deploy. At 1 p.m, Napoleon was ready to begin his advance across 6 miles of flat cornfields towards the main Austrian position, an escarpment known as the Wagram, 100 meters behind the Russbach stream. As General Lasalle's light cavalry and Massena's 4th Corps swung left to guard the flank, Oudinot's 2nd Corps and Davout's 3rd Corps advanced towards the Wagram.
Just a question. Anyone watching the video, have you ever been to... Are you a... I don't want to say a fan of Napoleon, but is Napoleon an interesting figure to you? Have you ever been to some of these battlefields and like walked the grounds and stuff like that? Because, you know, we do the Civil War battlefields and some Revolutionary War places as well, but I'm just curious if people do. I mean, I'm sure people do, but I mean, if you have and you're on the channel, which ones have you seen and how are they set up? How do they look? A lot of times, if you're a foreigner, our Civil War battlefields, we have a lot of monuments placed where certain regiments were. And then sometimes you see like a little cannonball pyramid where one of the military leaders' camp was or something like that. So I'm curious to see if it's like the same thing. But if you've never been there, then you wouldn't know. Just curious.
Bernadotte's Saxon Corps and Eugene's Army of Italy filled the centre. At 6 p.m, unsure of the enemy's strength, Napoleon ordered a full-scale assault against the Wagram plateau. But his troops met determined Austrian resistance along the line. By dusk, the Saxon 9th Corps had pushed into the village of Deutsch Wagram. The Saxon infantry wore white uniforms, like the Austrians, and as darkness fell, were mistaken for the enemy and fired on by friendly units.
Oh no.
The Saxons panicked and fled with heavy losses.
Oh, well.
Napoleon's attempt at a quick breakthrough had failed. That night, both armies slept in the open, while Charles and Napoleon planned their next moves. On the second day, Napoleon planned for Davout's 3rd Corps to lead the attack, rolling up the Austrian flank, while his other corps pinned down the enemy with local attacks. But to the Emperor's fury, he learned that overnight, without orders, Marshal Bernadotte had withdrawn his battered Saxons from Aderklaa, which the Austrians now occupied. Aderklaa was a crucial strongpoint in the centre of the battlefield. Napoleon gave orders for its immediate recapture, but the French and Saxon attack failed, with heavy losses. The Austrians had their own problems. Archduke Charles, knowing he faced a superior enemy, had decided his only chance of victory lay in an all-out dawn attack. He was relying on his brother, Archduke John, reaching him with 13,000 reinforcements, in time to support the attack on the left. But by dawn, there was still no sign of him.
Uh-oh.
What's more, as 4th Corps began its assault on Grosshofen, on time, 3rd Corps, which had received its orders late, was still getting into position, holding up the entire Austrian right wing. Charles had to tell 4th Corps to abort its unsupported attack until the other corps were ready. With the Austrians paralysed by delays, at 10 a.m, Davout began his attack. A fierce infantry battle erupted in the village of Markgraf Neusiedl, while in the fields, dragoons and hussars fought a giant whirling cavalry battle, as each side tried to outflank the other. Davout's corps took the village, though they couldn't stop the Austrians withdrawing to a strong new position on the Wagram escarpment. Meanwhile, a serious threat had developed to Napoleon's left flank and rear. Klenau's 6th Corps had driven back the outnumbered French, with some units advancing as far as Essling, dangerously close to Napoleon's vital river crossings. Napoleon urgently needed to reinforce his left flank, but he was also determined to hold back his reserves for a decisive attack. So he ordered Massena's 4th Corps to march across the battlefield and reinforce the left. A huge redeployment like this, right in front of the enemy, was high risk.
Yeah.
So Marshal Bessières was ordered to lead a cavalry attack straight against the enemy centre. Casualties were high. Even Marshal Bessières had his horse killed under him, to the alarm of his men. But the enemy was kept busy, while 4th Corps completed its redeployment and forced Klenau's corps to fall back.
Nice.
Napoleon now assembled a grand battery of more than 80 cannon in the centre of the battlefield. This was one of Napoleon's trademark tactics, a concentration of artillery to blast the enemy line and pave the way for a decisive French attack. The Grand Battery fired an estimated 15,000 rounds, setting light to the cornfields. Around 1 p.m, Napoleon ordered a general attack. As Davout continued to batter at the enemy flank, 4th Corps would advance on the left, 2nd Corps on the right. While in
just going back to something that was said, they fired 15,000 rounds. Was that just on day 2, or was that so far in both days? Because that's still a lot of firing. It's a lot of
in the centre, General MacDonald would lead forward 8,000 men of the Army of Italy, formed up in a giant 3-sided square to secure his flanks. But despite the terrible French cannonade, Austrian 3rd Corps and Grenadiers of the Reserve met the French advance with torrential fire. MacDonald's giant square was cut to pieces, its men mowed down en masse by cannon fire, and the attack stalled. But the Austrian army, battered by relentless French attacks, was near breaking point. Every part of the line was under pressure from the French. Archduke Charles, determined above all to keep his army intact, ordered a retreat. The Austrian withdrawal was disciplined and well executed. Napoleon had his victory. But his army was also so shattered by fatigue and heavy losses, it was unable to launch any effective pursuit. The Battle of Wagram was a brutal slugging match, the biggest and bloodiest battle yet seen in European history. French victory came at unprecedented cost. An estimated 37,500 casualties against 41,500 Austrian.
Wow.
4 days later, French troops caught up with the retreating Austrians at Znaim. As the fighting escalated, Charles knew he could not withstand the French a second time and asked for a ceasefire. But he had not consulted his older brother, Emperor Francis, who was furious when he heard the news, not least because long-awaited British support was finally on the way. 3 weeks after the Battle of Znaim, the largest amphibious force Britain had ever assembled, 35 ships of the line and 39,000 troops landed at Walcheren Island on the Scheldt estuary. Its aim was to destroy French shipping and naval stores. But following the successful bombardment and capture of Vlissingen, British commanders let the initiative slip from their grasp. Their force was bottled up by French troops on the marshy Dutch coast, where it was decimated by fever and dysentery. About 4,000 died. Many more became permanent invalids. The survivors were evacuated back to England in December. Emperor Francis, informed of the British debacle and persuaded by his generals that Austria couldn't fight on, made peace with Napoleon. In October, Austria signed the Treaty of Schönbrunn, giving up territory to the French Empire, Bavaria, Saxony, the Duchy of Warsaw, and Russia. In total, the Austrian Empire was stripped of 3.5 million subjects, forced to pay an indemnity, limit its army to 150,000 men, and join Napoleon's continental system. which meant ending all trade with British ships and merchants. Archduke Charles, meanwhile, one of Napoleon's more skilled opponents, had fallen out so bitterly with his brother, Emperor Francis, that he never held active command again. Napoleon had won another crushing victory, but there were worrying signs for the French Emperor. His enemies were learning, while he would increasingly have to rely on young conscripts to fill the gaps left by veterans killed or wounded on campaign. Few could have guessed in 1809, but Napoleon had just fought his last victorious campaign.
Wow.
If you'd like to learn more about Napoleon's major battles or campaigns, our sponsor, Osprey Publishing, has nearly 200 titles on the Napoleon.
This is really good. Very interesting. Not interesting. Enjoyable. Informative. Yeah, I like this. If you're seeing this, and it's be next week for me, but the week of the 20th, I will try to get the next one, 1809 to 1811, out the following week, and then the week after that will be the 11 to 15. But that one's like 3 hours long, so that one might be much longer, and I don't want to dedicate like a full week to just doing that, because I'm trying to also keep the other subscribers that I have happy. So but I might do 20 minutes on that. 20 minutes be 9 episodes. 9 shows, 9 videos, whatever the term is. I could break that. I don't know how I'll figure that one out. That's a couple weeks away. Well, this is good. I do appreciate it. I'm going to end it here. Like and subscribe, and if you have any other, I've been getting some requests, but if you have any other World War I, World War II kind of things, pass them on. I love this type of stuff, so this is interesting to me. And I hope it's interesting to you. That's why you're watching. So we all share together. Okay? Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Have a good night.